Internet. Today I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up and October TBR. So I ended up reading 7 books in the month of September, which isn't too bad, and one of them was pretty chunky in particular, and you can probably guess which one that is. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the wrap-up. So the first thing I read in September was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and this is one that I had been wanting to read for a while. I just think, first off, this book is absolutely beautiful. It's all black. So pretty. And just a side note, Leigh Bardugo came to Nashville on her Crooked Kingdom tour, and so I got Six of Crows signed, which was really exciting. But anyway, on to the actual book. I really enjoyed this book. It is a YA fantasy duology that's basically about these characters that are trying to pull off this very intense heist. I loved all of the different characters, and the cool thing about the characters is, for one, they're a very diverse set of characters, and two, they're definitely not all good and not all bad characters, so you are rooting for them for different reasons. But I just loved the story. I loved Leigh Bardugo's writing style. Really, the only thing about this book I didn't like so much is it was kind of hard for me to really immerse myself in the world right at first, and I think that's because I didn't read the Grisha trilogy first. So I kind of wish that she would have set up the world a little bit more in this book for those of us who hadn't read the Grisha trilogy first, but you definitely can jump into this duology without reading the Grisha trilogy first. You may just be lost a little bit at the beginning, but I ended up rating this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I overall really enjoyed it once I kind of figured the world out, and I'm really excited to get to Crooked Kingdom. Next, I read Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas, which was the reason I didn't read as much as I did in September, just because this book, even though it doesn't look like it, is like almost 700 pages. I think it was 692 or something like that, and it was a wild ride. This is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, which I love, and even though I really enjoyed this book, it definitely wasn't my favorite in the series. I still think that that spot is reserved for Queen of Shadows. And I really did enjoy this book. I just had some issues with a few things, and I did do a review of this book, so if you want to know more of my in-depth thoughts, I will link that down below and you can go watch that. Because there isn't a whole lot I can say about this book without spoiling the series for you, since it is the 5th book. But I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars anyway, like I pretty much have for any Throne of Glass book, but like I said, I definitely prefer Queen of Shadows, but this was still a very enjoyable read. Then came Diversathon, and I didn't get to read as much as I wanted to for Diversathon, but I did get a couple of books read. The first book I read for Diversathon was Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. And I ended up really enjoying this book. This book is kind of about a boy named Simon. He's in high school, and he is gay, but he really hasn't told anyone that he's gay, except for one person that he has been emailing back and forth named Blue. And they don't know who each other actually are, but they are able to talk to each other openly, which is really great. Overall, I really enjoyed the story, even though I really hated some of the characters. I did actually figure out who Blue was. I totally called it, but I didn't mind the fact that I'd figured that out, because it was still kind of cool to see that relationship unravel, and I overall just really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and this is one that I'd been wanting to read for a while, so I was really glad that I got around to it. And the last book that I read for Diversathon was Every Day by David Levithan, and this book is one that I have had for a really long time, but I just never got around to reading it. I didn't really know what it was about until I started trying to find books to read for Diversathon. But this book has a very interesting concept. So the concept is basically about this person who wakes up in a different person's body every day. So the main character goes by the name of A, but they wake up in a different person's body every day, which is really interesting. And so it kind of explored the idea of not having a gender and not really claiming to be really anything, because they wake up as someone different every day. And by anything, I mean in terms of like religion, sexuality, gender, all of those different kinds of things. But they still are their own person in a way. I just really loved the concept of this. It was super interesting, and the story was really well told, I thought. I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I believe that there is a sequel, and I think he's writing another book that's kind of continuation after this story. Even though I thought this stood well as a standalone, I am very curious to see what happens after this book ends, so I'm looking forward to that coming out. And in the meantime, I do want to get the sequel, which I think is told, it's the same story as this, but told from a different character's point of view, because in this book, A ends up falling in love with a girl named Rhiannon, and so that's kind of, you get to see how A tries to maintain that contact with her even though A wakes up as someone different every day. So that was really, really interesting. And the next book I started during Diversathon, but technically didn't finish it during Diversathon because it was already after midnight into the next day. But I read 6 Earlier Days by David Levithan, which is basically 6 earlier days that take place before every day, but some of the days are way further in A's past, and some of them are just a couple of months before every day begins. And this is actually an ebook, but I also found this book in the back of my copy of Every Day. But Goodreads counts it as a separate book, and since it's an ebook, I'm counting it as a completely separate book read. I thought it was interesting to see 6 other days in A's past that kind of help explain who A is and why A is the way A is. And I really enjoyed reading that, and I also gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read, I don't actually have a copy of because I got it from the library, and that book is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book in the Grisha trilogy. I had heard kind of some mixed things about the Grisha trilogy, which is why I didn't ultimately read it before Six of Crows, but I enjoyed Six of Crows so much and I enjoyed Leigh Bardugo's writing style that I decided to go ahead and get the first book in the Grisha trilogy to kind of see what I thought about it. And I actually ended up really, really enjoying it. The first part of it was a little slow going. I didn't really get hooked until about halfway through, and then I got really hooked. And I do want to continue on with the trilogy. I just have to get copies of all the books first, and I think that a box set of the Grisha trilogy came out when Crooked Kingdom did, so I'm gonna try and get my hands on that at some point so I can continue on. It was kind of cool to go back after reading Six of Crows and see kind of where this world started, and so I'm really looking forward to continuing on with that trilogy. I ended up giving Shadow and Bone 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read in September was actually a reread for me, and that was City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. And I first read this book, I started it in 2014, I think I finished it around the beginning of 2015, but I never continued on with the Mortal Instruments series for some reason. And I had kind of forgotten a lot of what happened in this book, so that's why I went back and reread it, and I actually listened to this on audiobook this time, which was my first time listening to an audiobook. And I enjoyed it for the most part. Wasn't super crazy about the narrator, but it was nice to go back and remind myself why I liked this book so much. And now I definitely want to continue on with the series before I forget what happens again. I feel like the Mortal Instruments series is one of those series that pretty much everyone on BookTube but me has read. I'm looking forward to continuing on with this series. It's kind of hard to explain the plot of this book, I feel like, but I also feel like this is well known enough where you probably already know kind of what the series is about. But I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Looking forward to continuing on with the series. So those are all the books that I read in September, and now on to my October TBR. So my October TBR is kind of a mix of things. It's a mix of things that I'm currently reading, a mix of things that I've been wanting to get to lately and I just haven't been able to yet, and kind of a mix of more spooky-ish kind of books. I will say that a lot of people choose to read like horror books and things like that in October, but that's not really my thing because I get scared really, really easily. So I kind of picked some books that I think are a little more on the spooky side, but maybe not too scary. And then just a mix of other things. So first off, we're going to start with what I'm currently reading. So I am still in the middle of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. And I've been reading this book for a very, very long time, and I think I've decided that I'm going to make this my next audiobook and try reading it in that format. Because even though I really like the story, I'm just having a hard time getting into it enough where I actually want to read it. And I think maybe if I try it on audiobook versus reading it, I might like it a little bit more. So I think that's what I'm gonna do to try and finish this book this month. I am also reading Persuasion by Jane Austen, and this was actually the Ostentatious Book Club's book for September. And I started it, but sometimes with Jane Austen's writing, I have a hard time following the story and I don't exactly know what's going on. I definitely had that problem whenever I read Pride and Prejudice for the first time. So since I started this book, I have watched the movie adaptation, and now that I kind of have a better idea of what it's about, I'm looking forward to finishing it. And both Little Women and Persuasion were the World Cloud Classics editions. And I am also in the middle of Winter by Marissa Meyer. This book has been on my TBR for several months, and I finally got around to starting it. I am about halfway through. I am almost at that halfway point. I am really enjoying this so far. This book is giant. It is like about 820 pages, I think, and I am on page 383. It's so good so far though, and it's getting really intense, so I'm really looking forward to finishing this up this month. So I have several more books on my TBR for October. I'm being a bit ambitious with my TBR this month, but I like to have options. Probably after I finish Winter and Persuasion, I'm going to pick up Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, which is the sequel and the final book in the Six of Crows duology. And I just loved Six of Crows so much, and I've heard great things about this book so far for the people that are reading it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens after Six of Crows, because it ended on quite a cliffhanger. And I also got this one signed in addition to my copy of Six of Crows at the Leigh Bardugo signing. And also, this book is just as pretty as Six of Crows. The entire thing is red, whereas the entirety of Six of Crows was black. So they just look so pretty whenever you put them next to each other. The next book on my TBR is another one that has been on my TBR for the last several months that I just haven't gotten around to yet. That is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab, which is the second book in the Shades of Magic series, with the first one being A Darker Shade of Magic, which I really enjoyed, but for some reason I just haven't gotten to this one yet, and I really want to. This is actually an adult fantasy series, and primarily I've read a lot of YA fantasy, but A Darker Shade of Magic was kind of my introduction to the adult fantasy world, and it was really good. And I have the UK cover, so that is why my books look very different than what you probably normally see from US booktubers. This month I'm also really hoping to get to Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. This just came out as a movie, and I've heard really good things about the movie. I don't know if I'll be able to go see the movie before they take it out of theaters, because I do want to read the book first, but I will definitely see it after it comes out on DVD if nothing else. But this book sounds very interesting. And it's a bit creepy because it has all of these old photographs of children, and some of them aren't that creepy, but some of them are, and so I just thought that this would be perfect to read in October. I also really want to read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is a classic horror novel. It is a story that I am very familiar with, and it is a book that I've owned for a while. This is also the World Cloud Classics edition, and it's fairly thin, so I feel like I'll be able to get to this one this month for sure, because I don't think it'll take that long to read. But I'm sure that you're probably familiar with the story of Frankenstein, so I don't really have to explain this one a whole lot, but check out those end pages, so creepy. The last two books on my TBR are books that I'm kind of thinking of using for Spookathon, which is a week-long readathon that takes place, I believe, October 17th through the 23rd. I've noticed on readathons, most of the time I can only get through about 2 or 3 books, so I'm putting 2 books on my TBR because I think these 2 books cover all of the challenges. The challenges for Spookathon, in case you are interested, are to read a thriller, read a book with red on the cover, read a book with a spooky word in the title, read a 2016 release, and to read a book with a paranormal character or creature. And also, when I say read a thriller, they mean to read something that is thrilling to you, so it doesn't necessarily have to be classified as a thriller. So the first book that I'm thinking about reading for Spookathon is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. This is a book I've had for several months and haven't read yet, and it's about vampires, I believe, so that's a paranormal creature, and I feel like this book is going to be a bit thrilling. I am excited to get to this one, and I've heard that even though the vampire thing is very overdone a lot of times in books, people really like this one, so taking that as a good sign. And then the last book on my October TBR that I'm also hoping to read for Spookathon is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. And I actually found an autographed copy at my local bookstore, Parnassus, which is awesome. And this book is about monsters. I'm not going to talk too much about it because my camera is about to die. But this book is about monsters, so I think it fits with things. It has red on the cover. Savage is a bit of a spooky word, and I just think it'll be nice for Spookathon. So I think I've rambled on long enough. That's it for this video. Let me know down in the comments if you read any of these books, whether it was on my wrap-up or my TBR, and what you thought, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye!